Alright, so today we're going to be reviewing some perfect competition and some imperfect competition. So let's get to it. So Grindel owns a fireworks stand. He pays $100 in rent per month, and he pays 3 people $300 per month. Okay, so if 3 people are paid $300 a month, this is like this is a variable cost, and so we have $300 times the number of people. So, because this is $300 per month per person, and $100 or $100. So this is a fixed cost. And so total cost is both the implicit and explicit costs, but we're not told any implicit costs, so we're just going to assume that the total cost is this information that we're given. So this is total cost. So n in this case is going to be 3. So the total cost will be $1,000. $1,000. And that's it. Alright, average total cost. Well, we have ATC. What is average total cost? So the average total cost, we're going to use the total cost, and then we're going to divide it by the number of units. So Q. So we have now total cost, which is 1,000. And then we're going to divide that by 2,500. 2,500. Which would be, if you wanted to simplify this, this would be 10 over 25, which is equal to 0.4. Alright. Now it asks for average fixed costs. So average fixed costs. We have the fixed costs. We're going to look at the fixed costs, which we said before was this $100. Right? So we're going to say fixed cost FC divided by Q, which is going to be 100 divided by 2,500, because that's the quantity sold, because it says that right here, which is going to be 0.04. And then finally, average variable cost. And like everything else we've done here, it's going to be the variable costs, which we said was this. So variable costs divided by the total number of quantity sold. So, which is going to be 900 divided by 2,500. So that would be 9 over 25. And I'm not going to simplify that. but that's it. Alright, so we have some multiple choice questions here. So let's try and answer them using our understanding of this unit. So economists normally assume that the goal of a firm. So what is the goal of a firm? Well, the firm wants to make money. That's why a firm would be in business. If a firm wasn't trying to make a profit, they would not be in business. So 3 is obviously true. So we can say this one is out. Let's see. Set the price of their product as high as possible. We know that that's not necessarily true because if you look at like a demand curve, right? Let's show that again. So this is a downward sloping demand curve D, and if you set a price up here, let's, right, if I can draw a straight line, this box would be the total revenue, but if we set it out here, we can all see, let's shade it in a different color, blue, right, that this total revenue would be much, much greater than this one. So this is also not necessarily true. So I'm going to put an X next to this one. And sell their product, as much of their product as possible. And this statement is basically the same thing, because if this is, I was bad here, I forgot to put Q and P. But this is basically the reversal here. If we put down here, we would be trying to put as much quantity, and the total revenue is not as much as it would be if we tried to do a good mix. So, I mean, this quantity that maximizes total revenue depends on the elasticity of demand here, but a firm will not necessarily try and sell as much of it or set the prices high. So the answer is C. Alright, explicit costs. So, explicit costs are the costs you directly pay that are not like an opportunity cost. So for example, if you wanted to pay wages, like in the previous question, the startup cost is something that would be a fixed cost, or like at the very beginning, or like rent, or anything like that. So let's look at some of these answers. So D is saying both B and C, so let's look at these first. Both. So include the firm's opportunity costs. Well, we just discussed that that's actually an implicit cost. So B is out, and because that's D is saying B is correct, we know D is wrong. Include that is foregone, that is sunk costs, so that is also not correct. So A is the correct answer. Alright, question 4. Which of the following is an implicit cost? So, the owner of a firm foregoing an opportunity to learn. That sounds like an implicit cost, but so interest paid. So that is not a implicit cost because you are directly paying it out of your wallet. It is not an opportunity cost. Rent paid by the firm to lease office space. Well, that is just saying rent. That is money out of your pocket going to whatever. So that is an explicit cost. So the only answer is I. Because foregoing an opportunity, well, that sounds like opportunity cost right there. So therefore, this question is C. Alright, so number 5 here is a question that's not, that we're just going to talk about. Okay, why is accounting profit always positive when economic profit is zero? So accounting profit, so profit pi, I'll just do sub A, right, is just going to be the explicit costs. Explicit costs. So that would be your rent, your wages, your startup costs, your whatever else, your cost of an oven. I don't know. Anything like that. That would be your explicit costs. Anything you pay directly from your wallet. But profit sub E, economic profit, is going to be your explicit costs and then also total revenue. You can't forget the total revenue. Total revenue minus explicit costs. Um, I'll just say, so it's not all scrunched up here. I will rewrite this. Oops. I'll just say negative explicit costs plus total revenue. There we go. It's total revenue minus explicit costs. PLICIT. Explicit costs minus implicit costs. And then total revenue. So if we're comparing these, if this one is 0, right, then this is the same, this is the same, but the implicit costs will mean our accounting profit is 0. There is no better opportunity, so we are making positive accounting profit because we are accounting for any other opportunities that we have. So, in short, accounting profit is always positive because of these implicit costs. When it's always positive when economic profit is 0, because of these costs, these implicit costs, because there's always a cost of something. Alright, so now let's look at this. Refer to this figure as the number of workers increases. So this is the quantity of workers. So if we go see as this x-axis is increasing, we see the output is increasing. But it's going downwards because from here to here, let's call this 1, and then this is another one. And if we see this distance and y, if these are roughly the same, these y distances are getting much shorter as time goes on. So this statement is correct. But let's look at the other ones to show why they're wrong. Total output decreases. Well, no, because we're still increasing our output here. Because output is still increasing as quantity is increasing. So this is wrong. Marginal product increases. No. Or we're increasing the product but not at a increasing rate. Marginal product increases but at a decreasing rate. Marginal product is not increasing though, because this is the product of the next unit, because if we went here, our marginal product is not increasing because the total output is increasing at a decreasing rate, and that's why these are not correct, but A is. Alright, with regard to cookie production, so we already know that there is diminishing marginal product, so that's not right. Decreasing costs of cookie production, no. Let's see. So it's between A and B, right? But it is not the marginal cost of cookie production, because as the quantity of workers increases, the total product is increasing at a decreasing rate. And so the diminishing marginal product is referring to these number of workers, this independent variable. Alright, so which of these assumptions is less than realistic for a firm in the short run? So, a firm in the short run. So, the difference between a short run decision and a long term decision. Well, in the short run, you can kind of hire some new workers. Uh, you can shut down, and in the long run, you can exit the market. You can change the size of your building. You could do like drastic changes to your factory or whatever, or move a factory or whatever. So, with that in mind, let's answer this question. Well, B is obviously not right because you can't change the size of your factory in the short run. The long run is defined as being able to like move. And so, if you can move a factory in 2 weeks, well, 2 weeks is the long run. So, it's not necessarily the amount of time, it is what you can do in some time. And A, by definition, is also wrong because you cannot vary the size of the factory in the short run. And D is wrong because you can't decrease the number of, or you can change the number of workers because you can quickly hire somebody, but in the long run, whatever that might be a week, but that is the long run to be able to move something, to be able to move your factory or exit the market. Alright, suppose a certain firm is able to produce 165 units of output per day when 15 workers are hired. Alright, 165 and 15 units are 15, 165 and 15. The firm has produced 176 when 16 workers are hired. Alright, so we want to find the marginal product of the 16th worker. Okay, so this is the output. So these numbers are the outputs, 165 and 176. And so when we go from 15 to 16, our output increases. And so we want to find the basically change in the output based upon one worker. So those of you who have taken calculus, this is basically the derivative at this point. And so, or the change in y over change in x, where the change in x in this case is 1, and the change in y are these values 176 minus 165, and that is 11. Okay, so number 10. The total cost curve gets steeper as output increases. So this is your total cost curve. This is what this is referring to. I don't know why this x-axis is so long. So price, quantity. Okay, so diseconomies and economies of scale are referring to this long run. That looks like it could be LRATC. This is what this is referring to. So it's not A or B. So you can kind of eliminate some answers by just uh, looking at some of the answer terms, and if you know that that's not relating to the question, even though it could be correct, if it's not that topic, then you can eliminate it. And it's also not C, or also not D because of that. But the idea is that when the total cost will increase, because as... Why did I put the wrong axis? What the heck? Am I okay? Let's try this again. Q and P. There we go. So as the quantity increases, right, the total cost is increasing at an increasing rate, because we saw that as the quantity of workers we saw the output increasing but at a decreasing rate. And so to have more output but it's at a decreasing rate, right? So this is what we are working with. This concept is diminishing marginal product, right? But because it takes more workers and it's more time and money to be able to produce more and more, because the product is not increasing as quickly, the price begins to quickly skyrocket. And so this is this concept of diminishing marginal product. All right. The cost of producing an additional unit is marginal cost. There's nothing more about that. It's just marginal cost is, we have our quantity axis, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just the change in costs from one to the other one. That's basically the concept of marginal cost. Alright, so we have a scenario here. Which of the following statements is or are true? So Farmer Jack is a watermelon farmer. If he plants 1 bag of seeds, he gets 30 watermelons. 2 bags, 50. 3 bags, 60. And a bag of seeds costs $100. Well, he is experiencing diminishing marginal product. And I didn't even read these things, and that's exactly what my brain jumped to. Because 1 bag costs 50, or he gets 30 watermelons. 2 bags, you get 50. And so if you doubled the bag, so right, you get 2 and the output, you would get 60. You would expect to get 60 here, but he gets 50. He gets less than the expected output. And so that's the idea of diminishing marginal product. And so we know that this first one is correct. Farmer Jack's production function is non-linear. Well, yeah, because that would be correct too, because the output is not constant with respect to the bags, right? Because the quantity you're getting, so we're not putting price here, we're putting output. And so the output is decreasing with increasing quantity. And so this is not a linear function. And the total cost curve is linear. No, it is not, because total cost curve. So now we're going to have this be a price. Total cost is like this. And because he has diminishing marginal product, so A and, or blah, 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 I and I is B. Alright. So we want to get an efficient scale. So what is efficiency? So if we have our little QP, right? Supply. So this point would be efficient scale. Or we could say it's when a marginal social benefit equals marginal social cost, or whatever. We want to operate at an efficient scale. So which of these would do that? Average variable cost is minimized. That is not true, because the variable cost is not everything that we are accounting for. It's not each cost. And so by that, B is incorrect. Now, marginal cost, if you minimize marginal cost, that's like we go from 1 to here, and our output goes from here to here. That's not necessarily minimizing or making this, not trying to find this quantity. So average total cost is minimized at the efficient scale. Alright, so suppose we were trying to double the inputs for a good, but more than double the outputs. Well, that is what we were talking about earlier, is this a long run and average total cost curve. And so this would be on this part, because when we have our long run average total cost curve, and so when a good, you get more output for your input, basically. That is the concept of economies for scale. And if it had said has the same, it'd be constant, and if we got less than, it'd be diseconomies of scale. And so this is just vocabulary. Alright, so we have some more questions here. Number 15. Because the goods are offered for sale in a competitive market, they are largely the same. Alright, so there would be few sellers and few buyers. That is incorrect, because in a competitive market there are many, many buyers and many, many sellers. And that is just kind of the definition of a perfectly competitive market. Next, let's look at C. Buyers will have market power. That is incorrect because one individual cannot affect the price of a perfectly competitive market. Like, for example, let's assume corn is a perfectly competitive market. If I buy the entire stock of corn, I'm not going to drastically change the price of corn nationwide. And so buyers do not have market power. And so D is correct because the concept of a individual demand curve, not the market demand curve, but a individual demand curve. If you charge less than the price, right? This is no why. Let's try that again. So this is the supply curve. This is the demand curve. If I can like write the letter D, demand curve, and this is also the price. I don't know why I drew a row, but go for it. So this is the supply curve. And so if we charge less than the price, which is the demand curve, we will not intersect the supply curve. Because you will not be... So this guy, if he tries to sell it for less than the price, then he will not be able to sell anything. So there is basically no reason. Now, yes, it's not going to be like perfectly inelastic or perfectly elastic. So we could maybe say something like this, right? Oh, no, that was not a line, that was a squiggle. And so if we said, here we are, and then we tried to decrease or whatever, yes, but this is in a perfectly competitive market, we're going to assume that this is the case. And so they wouldn't want to sell below the market price, right? For a competitive firm, average revenue is marginal revenue. And this is just kind of something you have to know, right? So average revenue is marginal revenue. Alright, the short run supply curve for a perfectly competitive market is so let's look at a graph for a perfectly competitive market. Alright, so let's look at, so this is going to be a firm. So this is our, in a perfectly competitive market, this is a firm. And so we have our quantity QP, price is MR, is average revenue, which is equal to demand. So this is this average revenue with marginal revenue. This is for a perfectly competitive market. So, and this will come up through here. So this is MC and AC. So this is a graph of kind of a perfectly competitive market for a firm. And a supply curve is like this marginal social cost. So we could kind of imagine that a supply curve is part of the marginal cost curve, right? But it is the part that is above the average variable cost. So this part is our supply curve. And so the answer is D. All right. When total revenue is less than variable costs, a firm in a perfectly competitive market will So a firm will want to shut down when the total revenue is less than variable costs. So total revenue is less than variable costs. And this is kind of just another rule that you have to know. This is when a competitive market will shut down. So this is your shutdown condition. So shut down if shut down if total revenue is less than variable costs. Okay. Number 19. Profit maximizing firms enter a competitive market when. So, in competitive markets, you have free entry. So, they will see that they can make a profit by entering this firm because the total revenue would be greater than their costs. And so they're like, shoot, I could make money by doing this. Let me do this. And so it's not just one individual cost. The price is better than total costs, everything, economic and accounting profit. So they will want to enter whenever they see that the price is greater than the average total cost. All right. A profit maximizing firm's total revenue. All right. Total revenue. So the total revenue is equal to the price times some quantity, right? But the quantity is where the so when the price is P1, so we're going to look at that was actually a straight line. Okay, so when the price is P1, so we already know it's not going to be anything with P2 and P3 because total revenue is equal to price times quantity. So is it Q2 or Q3? Well, this is the point where things get sold because we're not selling out here. This is the average variable cost. So this is we're selling at the marginal cost point. So this area is the total revenue. Total revenue. So 20 is A. Alright, so also another addendum to this is basically exit if the total revenue is less than total cost. So our shutdown conditions and exit conditions. So sunk cost doesn't matter when choosing to exit. Average fixed cost doesn't matter. It is total costs. And the same thing, marginal cost. The only thing that matters is the total cost. I'll put variable cost here. This is whatever. Total revenue is less than variable costs, and total revenue is less than total costs for exit. So these are just kind of, again, things you kind of have to memorize. Alright, so the Bob Corporation is a natural monopoly. Very cool. Now assume that the government has set a price ceiling. Alright. Alright, so this is in my perfect competition review video, but this is a natural monopoly. So, oh well. But we're going to be regulating a natural monopoly. And so a natural monopoly is something with a lot of fixed costs and their marginal cost is not significant enough. So that's why it's constant. So we still have our downward sloping demand curve. And the thing that's different, however, about an average total cost curve here is it doesn't quite intersect the marginal cost curve. So it might down the line, but not where we're doing things. Alright, so if we were, then we would have to draw our marginal revenue curve. So our marginal revenue, R, alright, so actually let's redraw this ATC, because we want it to intersect the demand curve at some point, but not the marginal revenue. So let's say something like that. So this is ATC. So let's look at where marginal revenue intersects marginal cost. Alright, so we have our marginal revenue here. And so if we were economists, we would charge this quantity and charge this price and then make this much profit. But we are not monopolists, we are the government, and we're trying to set a price ceiling. And so the price ceiling, so I'm also going to get rid of this. And so the price ceiling is where we want the the monopoly to be making a profit of 0. So if we said equal to the average total cost, right, this price minus average total cost is 0. So this is the price. So price with regulation PR. And so this is not supposed to be where it necessarily intersects the marginal revenue curve. That is just by chance. That is not a giveaway, because I could have drawn this demand curve in a different way if I wanted to. It's just where the price hits the average total cost curve. So this is the quantity with regulation. And so this is the best way to, in my opinion, I think mathematically it's a solid one, is to set the average total cost to regulate a natural monopoly. Because the perfect competition would try and set it to be this quantity right here. This is what perfect competition do. It would say, let's set it here, but we would be making a massive loss. This would be our deadweight loss if we tried to regulate it here. So instead, this would be our deadweight loss. We would be pointing at the socially optimal quantity, because that's what deadweight loss, or not, what perfect competition would do. And so this is a very solid compromise here, because the monopolists aren't happy because they're not making profit anymore, but they're still going to stay in business. Because if we had said, like, regulated at this quantity, then they would be making a loss and eventually shut down. And if it's something like airlines, because airlines are an example of a natural monopoly, right? If we were to assume something like the price of a flight was, of adding one more person is almost 0, that there is almost no change in marginal cost. The marginal cost is constant, right? The fixed costs are changing, or basically it has a high fixed costs. The energy and money to launch a plane. But we don't want these things to shut down. And if we regulated at this quantity where this green dotted line was, then they would shut down because they would be making a loss. But at least if we put at this line right here, if we regulated at this quantity, or at this price ceiling, we could say at least they are making a positive accounting profit, and so they'd be making no economic profit, but because of that they would want to stay in business. And so this is a relatively good compromise, and we wouldn't have too much deadweight loss. And so this is regulation of natural monopolies.